God of War Ragnarok's Skoll and Hati may play bigger roles than Fenrir. The two wolves spotted in the story trailer for God of War Ragnarok might replace the role of Fenrir in the game's version of Norse mythology. God of War Ragnarok's issues with the question of Fenrir might be solved with the inclusion of Skoll and Hati. In Norse mythology and God of War Ragnarok, Skoll and Hati are two giant wolves, similar to the well-known canine Fenrir. However, this is where the two stories separate, as in the Norse myths, Skoll and Hati are the sons of Fenrir, and the grandsons of Loki. Considering that Atreus aka Loki in God of War Ragnarok is in his teenage years, it wouldn't exactly make sense for him to be a grandfather. So, instead in God of War, Mimir tells Atreus and Kratos that Skoll and Hati are still sons of the arch-wolf Fenrir, but doesn't describe them as Loki's grandsons. However, Fenrir still existed as an enemy of the Aesir in God of War, and as sons of an enemy of the Norse gods, Odin imprisoned Skoll and Hati when they were pups to prevent them from being involved in Ragnarok. However, he then set them free in order to chase the sun and moon, resuming the cycle of days and nights. From the recent God of War story trailer, Skoll and Hati appear to no longer be serving Odin, standing at the side of Kratos and Atreus. What role will Skoll and Hati play in God of War Ragnarok? Further on in the story trailer, Atreus shoots an arrow at the sun, letting Skoll chase the sun away and force the day to turn into night. While this doesn't show the sun being consumed, which is one of the major events that takes place in the Ragnarok of Norse mythology, it does hint that Skoll and Hati could take over the role that some may have thought Fenrir would assume. Even while some of Loki's children from Norse mythology have made appearances in God of War 2018, such as the world serpent Jormungandr, Sony Santa Monica has done everything it can to distance those characters away from its version of the trickster god. This might mean that Fenrir's role, like Loki's, is going to be changed massively. Fenrir in Norse mythology is the giant wolf that is prophesied to devour the sun and kill Odin. Even though Fenrir appearing in God of War Ragnarok in a major way seems inevitable, there is the potential for Skoll and Hati to take over a large portion of the arch-wolf's role. The story trailer emphasizes this, showing Skoll chasing the sun away. This might mean Sony Santa Monica is setting up the wolves to catch their prey at some point and remove the sun from the sky instead of their father doing it. If Skoll or Hati do eventually catch up with the sun and devour it, this could also mean that other aspects of Fenrir's story wouldn't make it to God of War Ragnarok, such as the wolf's fight with Odin. While not seeing a giant wolf do battle with Odin will be disappointing for some, it does seem that the emphasis is being taken away from the famous arch-wolf and placed on his sons. A lot of the promotional material for the title is instead placing emphasis on the pair of wolves that appear in the story. The God of War Ragnarok DualSense controller, for example, features two wolves howling at the sky on its touchpad. This isn't to say that Fenrir won't appear at all in God of War Ragnarok, but his role might be lessened heavily to include more of a focus on Skoll and Hati. Mimir's exposition on Skoll and Hati in the 2018 God of War game doesn't state whether Fenrir is still imprisoned or not. This leaves the door open for Fenrir to enter the game in a multitude of ways, and it could be the case that Atreus and Kratos find themselves joining forces with Skoll and Hati to free their arch-wolf father. What this means for God of War Ragnarok's story, however, if Fenrir doesn't appear in any large role in God of War Ragnarok, and Skoll and Hati are the ones to devour the sun and bring about Ragnarok, this could have some big implications for the game's story. It seems that Skoll and Hati will be joining Kratos and Atreus for at least some part of their journey, and from the story trailer it appears that Sony Santa Monica's version of Loki will be the one directing the wolves, rather than his father. With Atreus taking the lead in God of War Ragnarok's narrative, this could lead to him being the catalyst for a lot of events initiating Ragnarok. Already, Atreus has hit Baldur with a mistletoe arrow, which caused the god to feel pain again and initiated the events of Ragnarok. In God of War Ragnarok, Atreus could also order Skoll and Hati to chase the sun away for good or devour it. This means that Skoll and Hati's role could also revolve around Atreus and the part he will play in the apocalyptic events of Ragnarok. If Fenrir isn't the one to kill Odin as well, this could leave the door open for another character to face down the leader of the Aesir gods. Odin is a mysterious character in God of War Ragnarok, but if the events of the Norse apocalypse are to be completed by the end of the game, the All-Father will probably meet his end. Skoll and Hati could be the ones to bring Odin down, but if Fenrir's role is changed, Sony Santa Monica could make some more adjustments to the Norse mythology, and fans could even see Kratos be the one to kill the leader of the Aesir. Another minor detail explained by Skoll and Hati taking over the role of Fenrir is Tyr's hands. In the Norse myths, Tyr only has one hand, as the other is bitten off by Fenrir shortly before Odin imprisons the wolf. With Fenrir possibly playing a lesser role, it makes sense that Tyr sees some similar changes in God of War Ragnarok. Even if he is altered from his origin in Norse myth, plenty of fans are still hyped to see Tyr, especially as another god of war to compare with Kratos.